I see us live on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, I do see that it has started alerting folks that we are live, so we can go ahead and at least kick off with some of the basic housekeeping. I see Karen and County Commissioner Tracy Kraft-Tharp. Thank you both for hopping on with us this morning, and to everyone else that is hopping on, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, want to welcome you onto our live broadcasts. I am Juliette Abdel, your Chamber President and CEO, and I invite you to not only like our page, hit the follow so you can get alerted when we go live. It makes us go faster at the start of this, or you can hit the subscribe button if you're viewing this on our YouTube channel. Now, most of our videos are always available for replay in the video section here on Facebook. So if you need to step away or if you need to come back after taking notes, you can always pause, replay, and go from there. Our guests are always willing to answer questions after the fact, but we encourage you to engage with us during the discussion. And you can do so through the comment section on our video. You can comment remarks that you may have about the topics that we address, or you can share any questions about anything in particular that might come up. Of course, these broadcasts are available to you generally on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then every now and then we pop in on Fridays with a resource. So today's broadcast, of course, since elections are on the mind, ballots are already hitting mailboxes, is to talk through some of the ballot questions that you may be seeing. I think we'll highlight some of the close to business related ones, and then we'll take up any questions that you have as we're moving through these. Today I have with me Jeff Weiss, and Jeff is one of our contract lobbyists through our coalition, the Jefferson County Business Lobby Group, and we are so excited to have him with us this morning to share some of his thoughts and feedback to our business community. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Juliette. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about the elections. Happy that the elections are almost over, as I'm sure many of you are. Elections coming up on November 8th. As Juliette said, you should have your ballot by now. Don't forget to mail it back early. It needs to be in prior to Election Day in order to be counted, or at least on Election Day in order to be accounted. I'm sure you're also probably sick by now of all the mailers and the several competitive state and federal legislative races that are taking place in and around Westminster. So luckily, we're not going to talk about individual candidate races. If we have time in the Q&A, we can answer questions about the overall political climate. But we are here today to talk about what is once again a very long ballot with lots of questions for the voters to weigh in on. It is a long ballot again, but we should probably count ourselves lucky. There were actually about over 150 ballot titles filed, as there commonly are, but only 6 actually made it through the lengthy and costly process of getting a citizen initiative on the ballot. And then there are a handful of questions referred by the legislature. Unusually, though, there are not a lot of major fights for the general business community on this year's ballot. There were at least a couple coming, including a big showdown over property taxes. But those were resolved in the legislature and both sides backed down. So luckily, no huge business fights, but still a number that are of interest to the business community generally. A couple quick notes before we get started. We're going to start with the ones that are business related first. If we have time in the Q&A, we can talk about some of the other ones that don't have a direct business impact. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on each one just because of time. That information is all in your Blue Book, which is really excellent. The Blue Book keeps getting better and better, and I'm always blown away by how much great information is in there if you really take the time to sit down and read it. But what I am going to try to do is provide some context for these ballot questions that isn't in the Blue Book, and some of the particular concerns that the business community may have that may not be obvious. Post any questions you have in the chat as we go along, and Juliet, please stop me if we do have any questions. We're just going to be doing statewide ballot questions today. We won't be discussing any of the county or city ballot measures. One last thing before we get started. The nomenclature for ballot titles has changed recently and can be a little confusing. You'll see references to amendments versus propositions, and they're numbered differently. So real quick cheat, and all this is in the Blue Book as well, but anything that's referred to as an amendment is an amendment to the state constitution, generally requires 55% approval of voters to pass rather than a simple majority. A proposition is a statutory change, a change to our laws, not the Constitution. That would require a simple majority. Those are lettered AA, BB, etc., are ones referred to the voters by the legislature. And propositions with numbers, 121, 122, etc., are citizen initiatives put on the ballot through petition. Okay, so just digging in, going through the order that the questions are on the ballot. We're going to start with FF, which is the Healthy School Meals for All. This proposition would provide free state-funded lunches to all public school students in Colorado, regardless of income. Right now, about 40% of students qualify for free lunch program based on income. That obviously isn't really a direct business issue, but how the program is paid for could impact business owners, especially small business owners structured as pass-through entities. We've seen several attempts in the past to increase taxes on higher income earners. You know, it's generally for a cause, but as part of a long-term effort to eliminate Colorado's flat income tax and institute a progressive income tax system like the federal tax system. All those efforts to date have failed at the ballot. This is another flavor of that. Proposition FF does not create a progressive income tax structure, but it does raise about $100 million in new taxes by capping deductions for those earning more than $300,000. So this is a tax increase. It would set a precedent for moving to a progressive tax structure. And that in itself is something that is of concern to the business community, because our current flat income tax structure is good for economic development, we believe. I will stop, see if there's any questions there, Juliet, and otherwise keep moving on.
Yeah, I don't see any questions. I appreciate you highlighting a couple of those things. Just quickly, I know Jeff said we are not talking about candidates that kind of are representing our area. What I have done, though, is included a link for you about the candidates. It says 2021. That's not true. It's 2022. So when you click on this, you're going to find the candidates for state, county, seats that cover Westminster or surrounding area, any that we've done forums with, their campaign pages, etc., that you can reference. And then, of course, a lot of what Jeff had shared earlier, especially as it relates to the language, which you can find in the Blue Book, has been typed into the comment section for you as well. So you have a greater understanding as you're reading something as to who is bringing that forward or who is driving that and helping in your decision on how to vote.
Great. Thanks, Juliet.
Of course.
All right, moving on to GG, petition GG. Again, you can tell by the lettering, this was referred by the legislature. This is entitled Adding Tax Information Table to Ballots and Petition. And you're going to detect a little bit of the theme in what we're talking about here. Proposition GG is part of that same push to move Colorado to a progressive income tax system. It doesn't do that, again, but it does require that each ballot, the ballot itself, the thing you actually fill out, include a tax table showing how each citizen-initiated proposition would impact tax liabilities for 8 specific income ranges, so 0 to 25,000, 25 to et cetera. That would obviously make the ballot a little bit longer, but the real intent by putting it on the ballot itself is to drive home the point to those voters who don't read their blue book, where this information is already there,
Mhm.
that some future proposed new tax increase on businesses or higher income earners won't affect you, the average voter, making its passage more likely. At least that's a theory behind GG and what is driving that. It's, otherwise, sounds unobjectionable to provide voters more information, and it is unobjectionable to provide them more information, but it's important to understand the context.
No questions. Let's keep
All
on moving
right.
through. This is going to be a breeze, Jeff. Either people are not awake yet, or this is just sucking the energy out of them.
Yeah, that is kind of more likely, and I'm always the downer. Um, okay, moving to propositions initiated by citizen and petition. But again, on the same theme, Proposition 121 would reduce the state income tax rate. We've seen several efforts or several moves in the past through both citizen initiative and even at the legislature to lower what used to be just a flat 5% state income tax, and continue to ratchet that down. This is another one that would ratchet the state income tax rate from 4.55 down to 4.4%. So like I said, this would continue to drive that rate lower. So still on the same topic of flat tax versus progressive tax, although this one's coming more from the conservative side as opposed to the progressive side, which the last two were.
I
We all like,
do have a quick question, if that's okay,
yeah,
Jeff. I'll
yeah.
pull it up on our screen to display. I do want to also give a shout out to Donna and Dave. I see both of you on here joining us. Karen's question was in regard to Prop GG that you just shared. Have they published different tax tiers?
Yeah, it's in the Blue Book, and like I say, the Blue Book already provides this information already. It's just it wouldn't be on the ballot. But for instance, it requires GG would require 8 different income tax brackets for which a fiscal analysis would have to be provided of what the tax increase or decrease would be for each of those 8. And I'm not sure I could find them immediately while we're here live. Oh, here we go. So it'll be 25,000 or less, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, 200 to 500, 500 to a million to 2 million, and so on. So that is what the bracket. Each question on the ballot would have to have that table if there was a tax question involved. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think Karen just said she found what you were referencing, and thanks you for citing that as well. So
Excellent.
good deal. That is
all right.
All the questions I see, so we can carry on.
Keep interrupting me at any time with questions. So back on 121, which would reduce the state income tax rate from 4.55% to 4.4%. I think it's fairly straightforward, but there are some specific concerns for the business community the business should be thinking about. We all like a good tax cut. Even if this is a relatively small one, the average tax cut will be $93, which that would depend entirely on one's own income. That's good for the pocketbook. It's good for the economy, but there are a couple of things to think about. The first thing is that when these kinds of measures have passed, and voters have passed these recently, the legislature has tried to make up that lost revenue, by increasing fees and taxes elsewhere. And often that does hit businesses. I would anticipate that if 121 passed, that would again happen. This would cost the state about $400 million out of the roughly $11 billion it collects each year in state income taxes. The legislature will try to find a way to make that up. It is interesting to note on this one that the impact on the state budget in the first 3 years after it passed would be relatively minimal, because we're projected to have Tabor tax refunds anyway, and this would lower those Tabor refunds, but mostly because you're sending the money to the state in the first place. And then secondly, more philosophically, or more indirectly, I guess I would say, as the state income tax revenues continue to decline because of measures like 121, the pressure for the aforementioned progressive income tax structure, which we think would generally be bad for business, just continues to ratchet up. So I think those are the kind of the general business concerns about 121, which is otherwise relatively straightforward, as I said.
Okay, I'm just double checking over here, Jeff, to see if there are any questions. We don't see any for this particular one, so we can keep moving along. And it's okay, as Karen was kind of doing as well, to if you're thinking through something or if you want to come back to an item that we've touched on, to type it in there.
Absolutely. And then we'll have Q&A at the end as well. Okay, moving on to 123, Proposition 123. This is dedicated state revenue for affordable housing programs. We all know that affordable housing is one of Colorado's largest challenges, and worker housing is a particular concern to this community. It's a multi-pronged problem. There is no one solution. This bill would try to come at it, though, by creating a dedicated revenue stream for affordable housing programs, both aimed at renters and owner-occupied housing. It would set aside 1% of existing income tax revenues, about $300 million a year, for those programs. So it's not a tax increase. It's just saying of the amount of money the state is currently collecting in income taxes, 0.1% would go to these programs. It's trying to address the right problem. There's no doubt. Is it the right solution? I gotta be honest, I don't know. I don't have a strongly educated opinion about it. There are a number of different programs that this would be funding. It's all outlined in the Blue Book. A couple things to think about, however, again, just in terms of context. Right now, the state of Colorado has more than $1 billion in federal affordable housing dollars to spend, which is fantastic. And we're really excited that the state legislature has decided to devote a huge amount of the ARPA funding to affordable housing. So we do have resources at the moment, but it is one-time money, whereas 123 would create a long-term funding stream. And I think the other thing to think about from the business community's perspective is that this is addressing the symptoms and not the problem. It doesn't really deal with the underlying causes of our drivers of our housing prices, which are, as I said, are multi-headed. There are labor shortages, there are construction cost increases, material increases, local government policies on zoning and land use. There are many, and this doesn't really get at any of those. So that's about all I have to say on 123.
Carry on.
All right. I'm going to take 124, 25, and 26 together. This is a group of liquor questions, which are always fun, and if we have seen on the ballot in the past. So we'll just take them all together. These are, strictly speaking, business related, but generally only if you are or want to be in the liquor business. The legislature really gets tied up when it comes to liquor policy because of all the warring factions in the liquor lobby. So it's rare the legislature is able to pass anything major, with one exception that I'll talk about. And the largest, longest, most bitterly fought running war in the legislature is that between locally owned liquor stores and the national grocery chains. Just as a matter of disclosure, my firm represents the craft brewers in this fight, and usually just get caught in the crossfire between the two sides. The legislature did pass a compromise a number of years ago that slowly started opening up the ability to sell liquor in grocery stores and convenience stores. And you've all seen the results of that. Every time you go to your grocery store or local 7-Eleven, see that they all have beer, and a few of them now have wine and spirits as well. That compromise would phase in the number of grocery stores and convenience stores that can have liquor licenses per chain over time. Right now, they're allowed to have 8, and by 2037, there would be no limit. Another part of that legislative compromise, just by way of background to understand these ballot initiatives, is that compromise also allowed all grocery store and convenience stores to sell beer immediately. They could only sell wine and spirits as they got that limited number of additional licenses over time as it was phased in. So 124 would accelerate that phase in and allow grocery stores to have more, pardon me, I lost my train of thought, would allow them to have more licenses more quickly. And again, keeping the same 2037 year, there would be no limit whatsoever. It ramps up that phase in more quickly. The liquor stores don't like that. The grocery stores love it. Of course, the grocery stores are the ones who are behind it. Another part of that compromise, as I mentioned, was that all grocery stores and convenience stores could sell beer immediately. Well, 125 would expand that to allow them grocery stores and convenience stores to sell wine, also all of them, whether you have these limited licenses or not. So if 125 were to pass, the only products limited by the need for a liquor license in a grocery store or a convenience store would be spirits. And the last question then is 125, which would allow third-party companies to deliver alcohol directly to consumers. Currently, liquor stores, grocery stores, restaurants, etc., can deliver liquor, have to use their own employees to do that. Think of Drizzly, if you know that or use that app. You get on the app, you order your alcohol, but it has to be delivered by the employee of the liquor store or the grocery store or the restaurant. Drizzly, those apps don't have their own drivers. As you can imagine, 125 is being pushed by DoorDash and other third-party food delivery services who would also like to deliver alcohol.
I have Julia, a question
for the liquor ones.
Yeah. So Karen's asking a question. This is on the previous prop that we had highlighted. She's asking specifically if it focuses on density and affordable and or subsidizing. She did come back and kind of try and clarify it a little bit by asking if it's to offer more housing density so they are affordable, or subsidizing low income people, or both. And just to kind of highlight, this is a ballot issue. So this would be statewide and not just necessarily for the city of Westminster that Jeff is referencing.
Yes, that's right. I don't recall seeing anything in the summaries about 123 regarding density or making density a priority, although we all know that densification and urban infill is a very effective and frankly needed strategy to address affordable housing. It is aimed primarily on low income housing, again, both for rental and for owner occupied housing. It's aimed at the construction of new housing, the ability of current renters to be able to buy their own home. It subsidizes about 5 different approaches. And it's based on, like most low-income programs, especially including in affordable housing, what is called area median income, and certain percentages of area median income to determine eligibility for these programs. And again, I think the Blue Book goes to a whole lot of detail about what each of these 5 or 6 programs are.
Will owner-occupied housing have deed restrictions on appreciation? Is that a question that you can answer based on the information that's in front of you, Jeff?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that is usually commonly the way that you do affordable housing, right? You do it with deed restrictions. I will admit I don't know the answer to that question in the context of 123. I think it'd probably be a safe assumption, though.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. I don't see any additional questions that have come up. So if we want to carry on.
We are done.
That's it. Oh, well, that was short and sweet. Is there anything else that you, or any knowledge nuggets you want to give to folks as they're reading up on this or deciding one way or another how they're going to vote, or if they'll vote?
No, other than just to encourage people to fill out your ballot, spend some time with the Blue Book. Let Juliet know if you have any questions. She can pass those on to me, and I'll do my best to help answer them and get your ballot in on time.
Absolutely. And what we've also listed on that link from earlier, of course, if you do not have your ballot, for some reason it did not arrive, there's contacts for the various departments that can help you with that, along with drop-off locations. So if you're interested in trying to find a place that you can drop off your ballots, that is all listed on our website as well, for you to be able to reference and reflect on. I don't see any additional questions that have come through. I appreciate you, Karen, for asking some of these engaging questions that you had along the way. And I appreciate Jeff for highlighting some of these. These are definitely not all of the questions that were out there. He did pick a few of them more specific to our business community that may be of interest to highlight. I do see Mayor Pro Tem DeMont has snuck in on here and was wanting to give us a quick good morning message. Good morning, and thank you for making it our way. I also see that Karen had another question about the DoorDash bill, if they're seeking to also keep 30% of bill as a service fee on the liquor. So,
yeah, Karen, good question. The ballot measure is silent as to that. But yeah, I think that's a safe assumption that DoorDash and Uber Eats and all these other food delivery services, whatever business model they use for restaurants, they will try to use that same business model for liquor sales. And that creates a lot of issues for the restaurants who are currently using them for food delivery. It makes it marginal business. And the liquor stores are probably not very excited about this, but I think that at least in the case of Drizzly, which is the only app that I really know, and when it comes to alcohol, they have to have some kind of an agreement that they've negotiated with the actual retailer, so that it's not going to be, I would think, as prone to as food is, where they just go and pick up whatever the to-go order is. I'm speculating there a little bit. It's not my area of expertise, but I think as a general matter, you are correct.
Awesome. Dave had a quick question. This was about the affordable housing. He's asking, and this is that he says he's heard that the affordable housing one has support because the legislator would do something worse. He follows up by saying, do you have any thoughts on that?
To the extent the legislature wants to do something worse, as you would call it, I don't think this would impact it one way or the other. I think if they want to impose rent control or some of the other more concerning proposals we've seen in the past, they will continue to do that. And I think we will continue to see rent control measures in the future. Look at what is happening. I think where that question may be coming from is looking at what the city of Denver is doing on affordable housing, and where it is much more of a stick approach than it is a carrot approach. Whereas 123 is much more incentives, carrots, subsidies for developers and for others to create more affordable housing. So from that perspective, yeah, it's very much a carrot versus a stick approach, which we have seen and will continue to see.
And Karen has one final question for us, and then we'll probably have to wrap up. This question again goes back to that liquor bill that we were referencing, or the liquor proposition that would allow for folks to be able to directly have them distributed to them. Do we know if any restaurants support that measure? Have you been able to connect with the CRA and find out what their stance is on it or any of that?
No, my partner would know that just because she does all the liquor law in our firm. Unfortunately, I don't know. I suspicion, I don't want to speculate, but I will say another piece of that 125, if I don't have the numbers mixed up, is that it makes to-go alcohol sales that was allowed temporarily during the pandemic, allowing restaurants and others to sell alcohol to go. It makes that permanent, which I know is something that the restaurants would like.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Karen's coming out with all these questions. I'm loving these. She's asking on rent control, who would absorb the difference, the property owner, or are they subsidized by the states? Does that, is it defined in there for us?
For the most part, this funding is going to existing programs. It's not necessarily creating new affordable housing programs. So however the existing programs work is how they will work, just with a little more funding. The point of affordable housing, I'm sure, as you know, is to make it affordable for the owner to be able to make below market rentals or housing available or ownership available to low income populations. So yeah, the intent here is that this state income tax revenue that is being diverted to low income housing and affordable housing programs would cover that difference. I think being an owner of affordable housing is always comes with its own challenges, and I'm sure the subsidies never totally make up the difference, but the intent there is to make it more affordable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for those questions, Karen, and thank you for all of you that are tuned in now or tuned in later. Ask us questions even at a later point in time so we can be able to address those for you so you can be an informed voter. I did want to throw out there a couple of things, and that is on Monday, we will be having a 4 p.m. One-on-one interview for Senate District 24 and 25. We had not had those over the last week and a half, and we're able to kind of readjust their schedules and fit in a few of those candidates for you all. So be sure that you come back here on Monday at 4 so you can tune in and see those individual candidates, what they stand for, what credentials they have, and what their hope is if they are either reelected or elected to office. It is Friday, and I want to wish you all a beautiful rest of your day, and I hope that you take the time to plan out a really relaxing weekend and then pick up your blue book and read through it and use Jeff's commentary as you are looking through this as well. But I appreciate you being on here, and I appreciate you, Jeff, for taking the time to highlight some of those that may be affecting individuals more from our business community lens.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
Of course. Have a great day.